Capital FM
105.7.
Siempre contigo.
As they investigate his killing in Bolivia in 2009.
Bolivian security forces say they have prevented an attempt on the life of President Evo Morales. 3 alleged attackers were reported to have been shot dead by police at a hotel in the city of Santa Cruz, and 2 people were arrested during the incident.
Details of what happened on Thursday are still hazy. An elite police squad were involved in a half-hour shootout at a hotel where the 3 men were killed and 2 other men arrested. How or why was 24-year-old Michael Dwyer one of 3 people killed in a hotel room gun battle in the city of Santa Cruz in mysterious circumstances?
I was at work and Marty rang me to ask me had I had any strange phone calls. He said someone had rang him and asked him had we a son in South America, and when he said he did, he said the person put the phone down. I don't know why, but I opened the internet, typed in Bolivia, and the first thing that came up on the screen was Irishman killed in Bolivia. So by the time I arrived home, Marty was in the backyard and someone was after calling him from one of the newspapers saying that they had photographs of Michael dead. Like if you ever had a worse nightmare, it had just started.
In the last hour, it's been confirmed that an Irishman was one of 3 people shot dead in Bolivia. 24-year-old Michael Dwyer from Ballinderry in County Tipperary was killed in what Bolivian authorities say was a foiled assassination attempt on President Evo Morales.
A grieving family in Tipperary tonight and many unanswered questions thousands of miles away in Bolivia, South America. Bolivia's President Evo Morales, speaking at the Americas summit in Trinidad, said he wanted to know who contracted the foreigners.
Nothing that was being said at the time made any sense. Nothing.
El organigrama que tenemos acá al frente. Manifestar en principio de que se trata efectivamente de una célula terrorista. La célula terrorista estaba conformada por Jorge Eduardo Rosa Flores, alias Chico. Asimismo estaba conformada por el señor Mario Tádica Astorca, Arpad Magierosi, alias Carlos, Elot Tuazo, alias Alf, Michael Martin Dyer, alias Mike, ciudadano irlandés, y 2 personas identificadas como Daniel Gaspar, ciudadano...
I can't describe the way it felt in those few days. I mean, your chest is tight, you don't know what to say, how to feel, and this was so wrong. And I mean, we could see it was wrong from, the first day. This was all wrong.
I first met Caroline in early 2010. I was back home visiting. She had been following my reporting. When I met her, she seemed a woman who was not just grieving a terrible loss, but someone who was still in a state of shock about what had happened and was coming to terms, just at the very beginning of coming to terms with everything. I started writing about this in 2009, and since then I've followed all the developments over the years. It's the most complex story I've ever covered.
He was always a real happy little kid, growing up, and Obviously there was three very close in age, Michael, Aisling and Ciara. Emmett came when Michael was about 10. He took a lot of responsibility, you know, as being the older brother. You know, looking after them when they needed looking after, and I'm sure there's, you know, scrapes they got into that he always minded them or whatever in school or whatever.
We were neighbours. We come from the same area there, so we kind of grew up together, I suppose. Like, never knew him anything, just one of us, a normal young lad, same as ourselves, play hurling, football, into the sports, the cars, the girls. The girls? Yeah, like, it was just, there was nothing extreme about him.
When he finished in school, he went to college in Waterford first and then to Galway, and he did a degree in construction management.
After he finished college, Michael worked for the security company at the Shell pipeline site in Mayo for a few months in 2008.
We know that Michael met Tibor Reves and various other Eastern Europeans who have been employed to provide security for the project.
Most likely it was Reves who told Michael about a security training course that was going to happen in Bolivia later that year and asked if he was interested in doing it.
The only place Michael had travelled was just on family holidays with us, so the extent of it was, you know, the usual 2 weeks on a holiday in Lanzarote or Mallorca or something. He'd never travelled on his own before, he'd never travelled out of the country on his own before. He talked about going, and I asked him what he was going to do, and he told me about the training course, and it was a close protection course, which is, I suppose, another word for bodyguard course. When he mentioned Bolivia, I just asked him, was it safe out there? And he said it was, so I didn't know much about Bolivia, and I didn't think twice about it, and I said, okay, fine. And you know, after kind of looking into it, I helped him book his tickets. I sat down at the kitchen table with him and I helped him book his tickets.
He was interested in that kind of line, in you know, security or that end as a career, maybe, possibly. I mean, he had a degree in construction management, and it was that thing, but it's always handy to have something else. I mean, I spoke to him every couple of days on Facebook, sometimes on Skype, and he was having a great time. I mean, he met a girl out there. There's pictures of him enjoying life.
That's why he went for the adventure. That's why he's like. He just full of go and adventure, and he was just out for a good time and just to live, like, and experience something different, a different country.
Michael was heading to a country that was volatile politically. Evo Morales, the first indigenous president, was openly socialist and extremely unpopular in Santa Cruz. It reached a certain peak in 2008 when Santa Cruz made all sorts of demands pushed, and there was even kind of a fear or rumours that they might declare autonomy or something even stronger.
Michael was a young adult, you know, his parents weren't tracking him with a monitor. However, he did stay in touch with his parents. He was very upfront to say that the security course that he went out to undertake in Bolivia wasn't happening. He was wondering why it wasn't happening, and he was kind of getting sick of the delays, and he was just going to come home very soon. We also know that he related to his family that he got a job acting as security for some guy who, I think the words he used, had more money than sense, because he was just sitting around and he wasn't sure of why he was being paid to do something which to him seemed like nothing.
The man Michael started working for was called Eduardo Rosa Flores. Nobody knows exactly when they met, but it was probably Tibor Reves who introduced them. Flores presented himself as a businessman who had a number of projects in Bolivia. There was a group of men that seemed to orbit around Rosa Flores. There was Arpad Magarossi, there was Elo Tuazo and Mario Tadic. But what Michael knew about Rosa Flores, what he knew about his background, what he knew about what he was doing in Bolivia is another major question. And we know that people have said that he didn't speak Hungarian, he didn't speak Serbo-Croatian, he didn't speak Spanish. So how much he was aware of what Rosa Flores was talking about when he was with him, that's unclear as well.
He told us he was working in security for this guy, and he said he likes to refer to me as his bodyguard, but he said I'm just doing security. The last time he contacted me was on Mother's Day, which was, I think it was towards the middle of March. And at that stage he'd indicated that he was coming home in the end of April. I think he'd also told Ronan and a few more of his friends that he was coming home towards the end of April. He did come home at the end of April, but not the way we wanted.
In the days after Michael was killed, there were headlines and reports and editorial which branded him the Irish Jackal, which said that he was the Irish assassin, the Irish toy soldier. I remember one particular article, talking about the family was claiming that he was a fun-loving son, and really what he was a neo-Nazi. They were scuppering the claims of the family who had known Michael, for over 2 decades. There was a sea of coverage that they were sinking in that was so negative, and that was making the circumstances much worse for them as they were coming to terms with the awful news that their son had been killed.
After the news got out about Mike, that there was groups of people out there that were trying their hardest to get as much as they can to twist it and make it look as bad as possible. And what we figured out after a couple of weeks, and I wish we figured it out sooner, was just you're always going to have those people out there. You're not going to be able to turn them around, let them off if they want to try.
It's very hard, especially when you're upset. When something like that happens, you're very, it was very emotional. And you're sitting there, you're looking at a computer, and there's people absolutely slating your friends.
Who you are mourning.
Who you are still crying about and talking to your friends about. And there's people that have no idea, no clue what he was like. And they're saying terrible, terrible things about him. And his family had to read that, like. It's bad enough his friends read. Imagine his mother, his brother.
We're in our 5th day of mystery surrounding the killing of Mr. Dwyer by the Bolivian police in Santa Cruz. Mike Dwyer has been portrayed from messages that clearly come from the Bolivian authorities. He's been portrayed as a mercenary looking to assassinate the president, killed in a 30-minute gun battle. None of that seems to be substantiated at this point.
Well, the situation is very unclear.
There aren't many people who can tell us what happened on that night in Hotel Las Americas. But I met the night duty manager who had been in the hotel when the police arrived. He can and has told us that there was no chase through the streets of Santa Cruz and that the police entered the hotel quietly, silently, took it over, killed the CCTV, cut communications, silently went upstairs, and then he heard a loud explosion followed by gunfire. And so That was a very strange and troubling meeting.
From the photographs, he was lying there on the floor. The marks of the tiles were left on Michael's chest. There's two reasons for our visit. One is this is a personal journey for myself and Aisling on behalf of our family to see where Michael spent the last few days of his life and where he lost his life. And the second part is so we can make a formal complaint to the Bolivian authorities because they've ignored the Irish government's request on our behalf for an independent investigation. And clearly, even walking up that stairs and walking into this room, there was no firefight. We realised we had to come here. Yeah. That was really, it became...
Yeah, there was a moment actually, was it the last day?
Yeah, it was like, we're going. I've always wanted to come. I just felt it was necessary to come.
Emotional but necessary.
Yeah, necessary. Just... I know I can't bring him home, but I am bringing him home in my own words, you know. I suppose when anything bad happens, you can go two ways. You can just, you know, curl up, or you can fight it, and my instinct was to fight it.
The authorities quickly identified Rosa Flores as the leader of the group in the hotel, and they claimed that he was a mercenary or a soldier of fortune or some sort of figure with experience of warfare who had come back to Bolivia to stir up separatist violence in Santa Cruz. He was born in Santa Cruz, yet left and spent a lot of time in Europe. There he fought with the Croatians in the breakup of Yugoslavia. Very questionable role in that war. There have been even allegations that he was involved in war crimes. Rosa Flores himself left a video before he left Europe, which he said was only to be released in the event of his death, saying that he had been called back to defend his homeland, Santa Cruz, and the eastern region of the country from the aggressions of the central government.
Tehát arra kell vinni a helyzetet, hogy politikai eszközökkel, de úgy, hogy erőfelmutatva, és fel vagyunk készülve. Pár hónapon belül eljussunk oda, hogy ha autonómia nem, együttélés nem, autonómiával, akkor kikiáltjuk a függetlenséget, és csinálunk egy új országot.
We went to visit the courthouse where the trial is going on of Elad Tuasso and Mario Tadic and the other of the 39 accused. We knew we would have access to meet with Elad and Mario at the court, so that's why we decided to attend the trial.
Where do you think Michael was killed?
I don't know. I saw alive in the airport, but I don't know they take back alive to the hotel or they kill in the airport, and I see part of my tattoo. He doesn't, and his
red boxers.
Boxers.
And was Mike kneeling or standing? Was Mike kneeling or standing?
All we are kneeling there.
Michael was kneeling.
He was quiet. And I saw him. I saw Mike, and I moved my head, no? And the police take me out, kick me, because they catch. I move my head, no? And somebody take me in the airplane, and in the airplane I heard shots, but I don't know if or what about shot.
On face value, it doesn't make any sense, but it seems there was a lot of confusion the time they took them from the hotel. He's adamant that he recognised Michael because of Michael's tattoo and his red boxers. When Elad told me before he said it in court, I really didn't want to believe it.
Capital FM
105.7.
Siempre contigo. Capital FM
105.7.
Siempre contigo.
Yesterday was very emotional, so I couldn't stay long in the room. Today I want to take back all the evidence that we've already gathered and look at it in real life. I mean, we've seen it in photographs, and now I want to see it in the walls and the floors and the doors and all the layout of the hotel. I've seen it so many times in video, and now I just want to go through it myself.
Miguel.
This is a video from what was leaked from the Utah police. So this is Rosa's room, or Eduardo's room, room 458. You can see the telephone. There's a gun under the pillow, placed neatly under the pillow. The video follows out through here. So you can see the Utah police officers walking down this corridor, down towards Elad Tuasso's room, passes Elad on the way. So what's happening here is he's gone into this room here, and they've put a bag in a cupboard, and then they film opening the bag and looking at the contents, and they show the contents, but they've just put the bag in the room. This is Elad Tuasso's room. So when they come out of this room, there's a person kneeling just here in this check shirt. That check shirt came home in Michael's belongings. Elad Tuasso has testified that Michael was seen alive at the airport, and the fact that this person, not identifiable by any marks, but by the shirt, is alive. This is the person in the shirt with their head covered, and that's Elad Tuasso. Whether he was killed in the airport or whether they brought him back here, Michael ended up here in this room on this floor. From the video, the policeman walks down the stretcher corridor with the bag that he's about to put in Elad Tuasso's room. And this stretcher wall is very, very clear in the video. It's fortunately one of the clearest parts of the video. And there's no evidence of any bullet damage here on the wall, which is the only piece of crossfire that they allege happened. The police video was done at the time of the police operation. The ballistics report was done 6 days later, so that's the significance of the video for us, is that there was no crossfire. The shots were only going one way. So within the 6 days between the police video and the ballistics report, they were made afterwards to justify the killing of Michael. There is so much in that 3-minute video that is so damning for the Bolivians. Shortly after Michael was killed, the Bolivian authorities released photos and video footage of Michael with guns, and I've always said since the beginning that there was no context with those videos. So in the video they have several barrels set up, and they go from each barrel and fire at the targets that are set up there, and when they're finished they start walking around, look at how well they did or didn't do. When somebody wants to come and use the range, they have free access?
Yes, you can pay an instructor, or if you can pay for guns.
Okay.
To get guns. How do you call it?
To hire, to rent.
To hire, to rent guns.
To rent the guns.
Yeah, you can rent guns.
And just looking at this, they're live ammunition.
Yes. You rent guns there, and that's it. And this place is for everybody. It's a park for families.
Park for families. And there's no restriction or laws on guns, or at that time there was no restriction on guns?
No.
Is there now?
No. You can bring your own guns here. All kind of guns.
People out here, you know, this is quite normal.
Yeah.
But in Ireland this wouldn't be possible. This did so much damage to Michael. And it was presented on Irish national TV as evidence.
It's very strange and breaks all sorts of procedure for a nascent terrorist organisation to video themselves training with weapons and then just leave the video lying around so that it could be very conveniently found by the authorities afterwards. The government claimed that the Rosa Flores group exercised really high levels of security, and in his questioning by Sousa Walter Andrade, who led the hotel raid, the police officer who led the raid, he said that they had the security expert who had headed up security for Shell, an Irishman called Michael Dwyer. And that's very strange to anyone, it seems, who knows what the security operation in Shell was, and anything about Michael, his background, his age even. It's just complete nonsense. That isn't to say that they weren't shooting the guns to learn how to use them properly for some sort of illegal action later, but it's also not to say that maybe Michael and others who were participating in it thought, finally my bodyguard training has started and it's underway.
When I saw photos of Mike in camouflage gear and in a forest and faces blurred out, and saying, one newspaper in particular saying, oh, this is him training with some paramilitary group. And I saw it, and all I could do, apart from shock, was just laugh, because I was like, no, that's John, that's me.
Well, most of the photos you saw of Mike with guns and stuff were all, I could tell you which ones were mine, could tell you which ones were his. Like, they're all our stuff that we've used to play airsoft with. They're toys.
There was one in particular that was taken in the GPO nightclub, and it was Halloween night. Mike was dressed up in kind of SWAT gear.
Because the group of lads were all dressed up in
they had a jet.
Yeah.
Sandra was dressed up as a bumblebee. I was dressed up as a pirate. I took a snap of Michael standing behind a backdrop of a city, and that was used in the media saying that he was in Cuba or somewhere like that training as well. And it was in a nightclub in Galway.
It was horrible at the time. You know, and they were very hurt about what had been said about Michael as well. Knowing Michael, they were very hurt. But you know, the fight is with the Bolivian justice system and not the media. As far as I can gather, Michael didn't spend as much time with Eduardo. He spent a lot of time with Rafaela. He was practically living in her apartment at one stage, so Rafaela was here as a medical student. It was the little conversations of the things that they had done together that were nice to hear, and the conversations that they'd had and the things he had told her about us and his family, and it's nice to know that he talked about home so fondly.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I can't believe something.
So that was at the wedding.
Yes.
So that was, I knew it was for me, so I was right across the table from him. But he always had a big smile. He was always... I have that up on his wall in the bedroom. I think it's a lovely one.
We were dancing salsa.
Salsa?
Trying to.
I don't know, Michael could dance like that.
He couldn't.
The clattering again.
Yeah. They weren't like hiding. They weren't like carrying guns like they say.
You never saw any guns with him?
Carmi knew that he would go to my place. So she called me at like 6 in the morning and she asked if he had slept there. And it was the first thing she asked. Like, did you shoot sleep there? I was, no, why? And she said, turn on the TV. They kept showing, but they didn't know who they were yet.
But you knew?
I knew, but there is always the hope that... I always had the hope that it wasn't, because they didn't show anything. Like, they weren't saying names. They just said that they were foreigners. They said that 3 of them were dead, and 2 of them were being arrested. So by that point, I didn't know if he was dead or if he was being arrested. So, and then they showed the picture. That's what I knew, because they showed the picture really fast, but I saw the tattoo. So.
And it was just coincidence that Michael didn't stay with you that night?
It was.
Because he'd stayed with you so often.
He said that he had to leave. When he arrived, he said that he would have to leave at midnight. But he asked if I wanted him to stay. And I said no, that it was okay. Yeah. So then he left.
People like his girlfriend Rafaela, who had no reason not to believe him, who spent a lot of time with him, were very convinced by what he said, and have told us that had she any suspicion at all that he was up to no good, she would have had nothing to do with him. We also know that he didn't speak any Spanish from Rafaela, from the hotel staff in the hotels he stayed in, and yet we're told that he was conspiring with local opposition figures to topple the government. Maybe he was in those meetings where that conversation was happening, and he wouldn't have understood anything if that conversation was happening in Spanish. The fundamental central fact of the case remains that if there was anything that he was doing that was illegal in Bolivia, Bolivia does not have a death penalty, it has a legal system. The authorities clearly had total control of that hotel. They had every opportunity to make him a prisoner.
Organigrama que tenemos acá al frente. Manifestar en principio de que se trata efectivamente de una célula terrorista.
We became aware that the chief investigator, who had been appointed by the Bolivian government, had fled Bolivia and sought exile in Brazil. And I suppose he was, we understood, the person who would have been on the scene early after Michael was killed, who would have established whatever evidence might have been there, and who'd also, been assigned to this case, so was given lots of time and resources to investigate it. We wanted to hear his version of the story.
In his conversation with me in exile, he admitted that he knew what was going on was not necessarily correct or lawful, and he hinted that ambition got the better of him, that the government said, if you can deliver this case, then maybe we'll make you chief public prosecutor in Bolivia. Very senior post, and that would have been a huge coup for Marcelo Souza. He was then dumped by the government because he wasn't able to deliver what they needed, and they turned on him. And many people in Bolivia will say, he was corrupt, but they will also say that he was manipulated by the government and then double-crossed, abandoned and forced into exile.
He may have his own, I suppose, agenda for being at the meeting. He may have his own reasons for fleeing Bolivia, but I think at this point Michael's case is as important to him as it is to us in his own story. From what I've seen of some of the excerpts of what Souza has said in public, I believe he's ready to give the answers now. Can I ask, was Michael executed?
Bueno, yo creo que no solamente Michael, sino los demás que le acompañaban a él. No había razón de ingresar a las 5 de la mañana al hotel de la forma que ingresaron. No había razón de generar tanta violencia, porque si hubieran querido hacer algo legal, me hubieran comunicado a mí como fiscal para que yo pueda organizar el operativo, y yo en ningún momento hubiese permitido que den muerte absolutamente a nadie. Entonces creo que todos estos puntos son importantes y que me hacen ver a mí como abogado de que sí hubo una ejecución en el Hotel Las Américas. De todo lo que yo he colectado o me han pasado la información, yo no he detectado que haya habido una conspiración para matar al presidente Evo Morales. En ningún momento hubo esa situación, ¿no? Lo que puedo aditamentar es lo siguiente: yo, dentro de todo lo que he visto en la investigación, en ningún momento he podido detectar de manera real que Michael Dwyer haya tenido alguna vinculación delictiva dentro del caso.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Buenas tardes.
Michael Dwyer was my son. He came into my life and that of my husband, Martin, on the 15th of June 1984. He was the eldest of our 4 children, and he brought such joy to all of our lives. Michael was executed at the Hotel AMÉRICAS on the 16th of April 2009. He was shot in the heart. And when he lay dead or dying, he was shot 4 more times in the back. Michael was the victim of an extrajudicial killing. His killing is a human rights issue. It is also a loss that myself and my family find so difficult to cope with. On Tuesday, we travelled to La Paz and met with representatives of the Bolivian government. Our objective was to present them our family's complaint into the extrajudicial execution of our son, and to personally call upon them to accept our request for an independent, international investigation into his death. I just agreed with the meeting.
For accepting our request to meet them. Yeah, okay. So,
one of our primary objectives here was to make a formal complaint to the Bolivian authorities. They keep on in their official correspondence saying that they haven't had a complaint from the family. So it was important for us to make this trip to the ministries, and if we hadn't got that, we wouldn't have achieved one of our objectives coming here. I got everything off my chest about the confrontation, and that there was no armed confrontation, and the ballistics report and the lack of credibility of the ballistics report. I was saying it was your evidence, your ballistics reports, your photographs that you sent to the Irish government. So this is what confirmed Michael was executed. I also challenged him on the police operation and asked him why none of the UTAR police officers were involved, were interviewed at the time. He just couldn't answer. He just, head down, didn't answer. In the beginning, when we knew we were coming, I kind of thought it would be something to help close, for a family, for us. I don't think for me it will ever close. But for the rest of Kira, Aisling and Emmett, I was hoping that it would go some way to help closing Michael's death for them, but now that I'm here, I don't think it will either. That'll never happen.
They admitted their guilt to a minor complicity charge in return for time served. And that must have been very difficult for the Dwyer family, because had he been arrested in the hotel, Michael could have been coming home then as well. And that would have been an opportunity for us to be able to ask him what was he doing there, and for Michael to tell his own version of events.
What's happened in the past 9 months since we visited Bolivia, I suppose the most significant thing is the release of Elad and Mario and their return back to Europe. The Bolivian government were making excuses that they couldn't do anything while there was an ongoing trial. Now, the trial is still ongoing, but I can't imagine it can hold up for much longer. So when that happens, then they said when we met them last that they would agree to an independent investigation. So hopefully we're closer to that. Every bit of effort gets you that bit closer to A, getting the truth, and B, getting justice. So you feel there's some progress, so I don't lose hope.
So obviously it would appear that there's a feeling of guilt by some of those who were involved, and there's
absolutely, yeah. Even the public prosecutor, that's what he was saying, like he couldn't live, you know, with that guilt anymore, that he had to speak out. When you take it all away, you know, and sift through it all, there's people are now beginning to talk.
Yeah, but it's been 6 tough years, you know, but as you say, if it doesn't happen soon, witnesses could become incapacitated or die off.
I don't want anything more than this. I want an international investigation. Why? Because I don't have anything to hide. They make a trial against us because they have a political reason. They have a political reason, and this is
people, I suppose, set expectations for me. I knew from the very start it wouldn't be solved quickly. It was going to take time, so I suppose I was prepared for that. It was going to be a number of years, maybe the rest of my life. I don't know.
For luck, they are free, living in Miami.
First of all, I'd like to say I'm very glad and happy that Elad is home.
Thank you.
The fact of the matter is, though, that Michael will never come home. And my family will never get over this. I'd like to thank you all here for giving me this opportunity to present to you today. I have previously had the opportunity to engage with this forum with the MEPs and have had very good support.
There's too much contradictory information. There's too many holes, there are too many gaps that need to be resolved before we can really arrive at a definitive version of events. But there are people who have information, or that we must believe have more information about what happened, and they have not yet spoken. And the two central figures that we're waiting to hear a full account from are Tadic and Tuazo. Hopefully now that they are out of Bolivia, that they have served their time, and that we assume that they'll never go back there, that they might at this stage feel freer to give a full accounting of what went on in the hotel, what the group was doing. The problem is, if Tuazo and Tadic are not prepared to be more forthcoming, then we are facing being left with a lot of unanswered questions.
There's been so many developments over the past 6 years that it's almost like another piece of the puzzle is solved or is coming into play, so that it doesn't seem like we've had 6 years of nothing happening. There's been so many developments over the past 6 years. It's Michael's memorial card. Picture of him fishing off the quay here when he was about 10 years old. They used to come down here a lot to either fish or swim or jump off the pier here. It was a picture that had no meaning really until all this happened, and I was looking for a nice photograph for the memorial card, and this one was suddenly more important. Him just being a kid and the simple things in life that he enjoyed. It's been so much about, in the last 6 years, about those moments in the hotel. Sometimes you just want to block that out for a while and just look at the good stuff.
Crime Call returns next Monday night at 9:35 as the Gardaí seek the public's help with ongoing investigations. Next on RTE1, it's Claire Byrne Live.
Capital FM
105.7.
Siempre